This case, it's far from ordinary. And trust me, you'll want to stick around till the end. Because it took law enforcement 10 years to solve what at first looked like an accident, but turned out to be one of the most calculated crimes in recent U.S. history. It all started back in the summer of 2015, in a rundown trailer park on the outskirts of Mobile, Alabama, a poor, neglected area where people were just trying to survive. No running water. Spotty electricity. Life out there was rough. Around 4 p.m. one evening, residents suddenly came pouring out of their trailers, running in every direction, some carrying buckets, others screaming. One of the old trailers had caught fire, and fast. Too fast. People thought maybe it was a gas explosion. But the way the flames spread, it didn't feel like an accident. It felt intentional. The trailers were old and built with flammable scrap, wood, tarp, cardboard, whatever they could find. So once the fire started, it took off like wildfire. Residents scrambled to douse it with water, dragging buckets from a well down the road. But it was no use. The fire was out of control. Someone called 911. It would take the fire department nearly 30 minutes to arrive. By then, the fire had engulfed the trailer. Police arrived to keep people back, afraid the flames would spread to other homes. After nearly an hour, the fire was finally under control. That's when firefighters approached the burned-out trailer. At first, they were relieved. The door had been locked from the outside. Maybe the owner wasn't home. Maybe no one got hurt. Neighbors said they hadn't heard any screams. No noise. They even claimed the woman who lived there, Faye Monroe, a local henna artist, had taken her kids to visit relatives earlier that day. But when firefighters pushed open the door and stepped inside, what they found left them frozen. The trailer was completely destroyed, but in the middle of the small bedroom, wrapped in a half-melted mosquito net, was a body. Burned almost beyond recognition. Just bones and ash. No one could even tell if it was a man or a woman. The police were stunned. How could someone die in that fire, without ever screaming? The forensics team arrived hours later. The corpse was too damaged for visual ID, but based on what was left, they believed it was a woman. Soon after, neighbors confirmed, the trailer belonged to Faye Monroe. But that raised a chilling question. If the fire was an accident, why was the door locked from the outside? And how come no one heard her scream? But when forensic investigators took a closer look, everything changed. First, they ruled out the gas tank theory completely. The explosion wasn't caused by a faulty stove or a propane tank. This was arson, deliberate. And worse, it was murder. They examined the burned body more carefully. The victim had been lying face down. But then they noticed something chilling. Her wrists were tied behind her back. Whoever did this had bound her, set the trailer on fire, and walked away, leaving her to die in the flames. Even more disturbing, when they gently turned the remains, they found traces of cloth fused to her face, most likely a scarf or rag that had been tied over her mouth. That's why no one heard her scream. She'd been gagged. Fire investigators began combing through the wreckage, trying to find what ignited the blaze. That's when they found them, 3 large glass bottles, once filled with gasoline. The fire had burned them partially, but they were still recognizable. It was clear, someone had splashed fuel around the trailer and set it ablaze on purpose. And this person didn't just want to kill, they wanted to erase every trace. Detectives searched for a motive. That's when they discovered something missing, gold jewelry, worth nearly $5,000, that the victim, Faye Monroe, was known to keep inside her bedroom closet. The odd thing? The closet door was still intact. The room was oddly undisturbed. Nothing was trashed. No signs of forced entry. Whoever did this knew exactly where to look. And the front door? Still locked. No signs of break-in. That meant one thing: the killer was someone Faye knew. Someone she let in. Police started canvassing the neighborhood. They learned that Faye was a popular henna artist, known by many in the community. She worked from home, had clients from all over, and sometimes traveled to nearby towns for work. They also learned something else. Faye had been living with a man, Harold Davis, but they weren't legally married. He had a long rap sheet: drugs, assaults, public intoxication. In and out of jail. Always angry, always drunk. Neighbors described him as trouble. And now, Harold was missing. Police started searching for him, but no one had seen him that day. Some said they hadn't seen him since the night before the fire. As they expanded their search, they started asking questions about the couple's 3 kids, 2 boys and a girl. A neighbor remembered something. Around noon that day, she saw Harold walking down the road with the kids. They were heading toward a set of abandoned cabins a mile away, a known squatter spot. Police followed the lead and eventually found one of the cabins. When they knocked, a woman answered. It was Faye's mother, who lived nearby. Inside were the 3 kids, alive and unharmed. When police told the grandmother what had happened to her daughter, she collapsed. The officers had to catch her as she fainted on the porch. Later, at the morgue, they confirmed the remains belonged to Faye Monroe. But the cause of death was still under investigation. Was she burned alive, or killed before the fire? The autopsy might hold the answer. Meanwhile, back at the station, police brought Faye's mother in for questioning. That's when a bombshell dropped. She told them, Faye and Harold, they were never legally married. He took her in when she was young. She ran away from home. My husband never approved of him, said he was trash. But she wouldn't listen. She stayed with him for 7 years. Now the question was, where the hell is Harold Davis? Faye's mother continued her heartbreaking story. She said her daughter ran away with Harold when she was just 19. Her father didn't approve of the relationship. He knew Harold was nothing but trouble. A drunk, a criminal. He begged Faye to stay. But she didn't listen. She disappeared for nearly 3 years. Her mother said, we didn't see her, didn't hear from her. Her father, he died angry. Said his daughter had broken his heart. She believed the stress is what killed him, complications from diabetes and high blood pressure, made worse by heartbreak. It wasn't until after her father's funeral that Faye finally showed up again, standing on her mother's doorstep, asking for forgiveness. They reconciled, but the scars remained. By that time, Faye had moved back to the trailer park with Harold. They had 2 kids now. She had started working again as a henna artist and was trying to build a life, but still. Harold hadn't changed. He refused to marry her. Wouldn't sign the birth certificates. He didn't work. He didn't provide. He drank, he smoked, and she was left supporting the entire household. I begged her to leave him, her mother told police. But she was in love. She kept saying, one day he'll change. He'll marry me. He'll do right by us. But deep down, I knew that day would never come. Police were now convinced Harold Davis was suspect number 1. When they asked the mother how the kids ended up with her that day, she confirmed Harold had dropped them off earlier, as he often did when Faye went to work. He shows up around noon, leaves the kids, and comes back around sunset to pick them up, she said. That's how it's always been. But when asked whether the children were enrolled in school, the answer was even more concerning. No, she said. Harold never filed their names. He didn't want them in the system. Said it was none of the government's business. Now the investigators had another angle. Had Faye gotten into a fight with someone from the neighborhood? Was there any enemy who might have wanted her dead? They canvassed the trailer park. But everyone said the same thing. Faye? No. She stayed to herself. Never started drama. She was a sweetheart. Took care of her kids. Just tried to survive. Everyone agreed, the only problems in her life came from Harold. He drank. He fought. He always argued about money. Never worked. Never helped. By now it was 7 or 8 p.m., hours after the fire. And Harold still hadn't shown up. They tried calling his phone, it was off. Dead. That's when police issued a statewide bolo, be on the lookout for Harold Davis. He was now wanted for questioning in connection with the murder of Faye Monroe. The next day, police visited Harold's parents' house across town. He wasn't there. His father said, "We haven't seen him in almost a month. Ever since he got with Faye, he cut off the whole family." They searched the house. Nothing. They asked neighbors, "Did anyone see Harold recently?" One man said, "Nope. That guy's been off the radar for years. He never stayed here. Used to hang out on the other side of town. Maybe check the junkyards or the old shelters." One of Zeke's usual hangout spots was this little corner just outside the trailer park, a dusty, half-abandoned lot near the scrapyards. That's where the cops decided to start asking questions. Locals knew Zeke well, and eventually one of his close buddies, a guy named Travis, spilled some details. Travis said Zeke had been talking about getting out, like, way out. Said he met someone who could smuggle him into Italy for the right price. He was looking to pull together 6, maybe 7 grand to make it happen. Just needed the cash up front, and he'd disappear. That tip changed everything. Now it made sense to the cops. The house was burned but barely touched by water, which meant the fire was set intentionally. Whoever took the jewelry and cash knew exactly where everything was. And Zeke? He vanished the same night his wife ended up dead. To make matters worse, Zeke had a rap sheet. He'd done a 6-month stint for burglary just a year and a half ago. Not a long stretch, but enough to show he was no stranger to the law. What kind of monster ties his wife up, pours gasoline on her, and sets her on fire? The detectives took Travis's statement seriously. They believed Zeke had stolen around $6,000 worth of valuables and skipped town to pay for the illegal crossing. Every known human smuggling route in the country was now under surveillance. Cops were racing to catch Zeke before he disappeared across the Atlantic. Week after week passed. Then came the break, the autopsy results. Tammy didn't die in the fire, she had been strangled first. Her family wept with a twisted sense of relief. Burned alive? That was unthinkable. But strangled, it felt like a less horrifying death. Still cruel. Still evil. But at least she hadn't suffered the flames. As the months rolled on, Zeke became a ghost. Cops knew where he was headed, Italy, and they coordinated with Interpol and Italian authorities. They had his full name, fingerprints, passport number, the whole deal. Years passed. 1, 2, then 5, then 10. It wasn't until a consulate worker in Rome ran Zeke's ID during a routine document request that he popped back up in the system. The name triggered a red flag. A decade later, they finally had eyes on him. The worker contacted U.S. authorities, who in turn alerted the Moroccan police. A quiet order was given: if he shows up again, hold him. He's wanted for murder. Sure enough, the next week, Zeke returned to the consulate. He sat down. Waited. Then, bam, Italian police surrounded him. Zeke lost it. "Why the hell are you arresting me?" "I didn't do nothing," he screamed. "We're not arresting you for anything here," one officer told him. "The U.S. requested extradition. You're wanted for a homicide. You'll be sent back." Zeke froze. "I'm not going back there. I didn't kill anyone." "You got the wrong guy." But the cuffs were already on. Days later, Zeke was flown back to the States. Cops were waiting at the airport. He was hauled into the sheriff's office and thrown into the same interrogation room where it all began, 10 years earlier. They asked him straight up, "Did you kill Tammy?" Zeke leaned back and said coldly, "I don't know no Tammy. I ain't never been married. I got no kids. Y'all got me confused with someone else." He denied everything. 10 years had passed. He was banking on the time gap to blur the lines, to make people forget. He claimed he never lived at the trailer, didn't know the victim, and didn't have anything to do with any fire. They pressed him over and over. But he stayed silent. His lawyers spoke on his behalf, refusing to let him say much of anything. Zeke didn't crack, not at first. But then came one final question from Sheriff Cole. "How'd you get out of the country, Zeke?" Zeke looked him dead in the eye and said, "I was just hangin' with some folks. One of 'em told me about a guy who could get me out." Zach thought he had it all figured out. He told the detectives that a friend offered him a cheap ticket to Italy, and since he had some savings, he jumped at the opportunity. He packed his bags, took what cash he had, and left town with the guy. Next thing he knew, he was on a ferry heading out of the country. But the police weren't buying any of it. They knew Zach was lying. The truth? Zach was broke. Dead broke. He was an addict. Any money he got in the morning, he'd drink it away by nightfall. He never had savings. Never had a plan. And for 10 years, he clung to the hope that the case would fade into cold storage. But the investigators weren't letting go. They had one last card to play, and it was a brutal one. While Zach sat there, confident and cocky, thinking he'd outsmarted everyone, the lead detective leaned in and said, "What if I told you, she's still alive?" Zach froze. "Fatima," the detective continued, "the woman you were going to marry, she didn't die in that fire. She survived. She's scarred, yeah. But alive." Zach's whole demeanor shifted. The color drained from his face. His hands started trembling. "What do you mean she's alive? That's not possible. She was dead. I saw the fire." The detective pressed harder. "We're giving you one chance, Zach. Come clean. Tell us why you did it, why you took her money, set her house on fire. If you cooperate, we'll help you." Zach was unraveling fast. He kept muttering nonsense, trying to piece together lies. But it wasn't working. One of the officers gripped Zach's arm firmly and said, "Listen. Just tell us what happened. We know you didn't kill her, we know it was just about the money. But we need to hear it from you." At that moment, reality hit Zach like a freight train. "She's really alive," he whispered. The detective nodded. "Want us to bring her in? Face to face?" Zach shook his head violently. "No. No need. I'll tell you everything." And so he did. "I didn't set the fire myself," Zach began. "I went to her house that night asking for money. $5,000. I told her I needed it to get smuggled to Italy. She gave it to me. That's all." I didn't touch a match. I didn't burn anything. But the detectives weren't done. Zach, one said, we know she had a down payment on a condo. We know she was desperate to come up with the rest. We also know she sold her gold to a jeweler months before the fire. She wasn't going to just hand you that kind of money. Zach's face twitched. He was trapped. The detective continued. You didn't just take the money. You set that fire. You left her there to burn, thinking no one would ever connect the dots. But she survived. And now it's time to talk. Zach slumped in his seat. His eyes were distant. For a moment, he didn't speak. Then finally. Yeah. I did it. I lit the fire. I stole the money. I thought she was dead. I thought I could just disappear. But now I know it's all crashing down. He explained everything. How Fatima refused to lend him more money unless he legally married her and registered their kids. How that triggered him, made him angry. Every time she brought it up, I'd lose it. I told her I wasn't marrying her, I wasn't registering the kids. I just wanted out of this life. I wanted to get to Italy and start over. His confession was cold, bitter, and without remorse. He still didn't think he was a murderer because he believed she survived. But the damage was done. Now picture this. Faye had endured years of abuse. Harold beat her, insulted her, locked her down. But she stayed. No one knew why. Maybe she thought she could fix him. Maybe she was afraid. Or maybe she still loved the man she met at 19. But Harold never changed. He never lifted a finger for her. Never worked. Never supported her. She carried everything, and when he couldn't squeeze more out of her, he snapped. He told police. I knew the only way to get that money was to take it. All of it. And disappear. That's when the twisted plan was born. Rob her. Kill her. Burn the house. Then sneak off to Italy like nothing happened. It all started with a conversation with a friend. The guy said he knew someone who could smuggle him into Italy by boat, cheap. Just $5,000. But it had to be fast. This week. No time to waste. Harold had nothing. He was broke. So his solution? Murder. He waited for the perfect moment. One day, Faye was home and not working. Around 11 a.m., Harold got up, took the kids to their grandma's house, even though their mom was home. He didn't want them there. He didn't want witnesses. Then he returned. Faye was relaxing inside. That's when he confronted her. I asked her for money again, he told police. She said no. Said I was never gonna see that cash. That I needed to get a job, step up, or get out. And that was his breaking point. He said he snapped. He grabbed a towel. Threw it over her face. Began punching her, yelling, screaming, blaming her for everything. She tried to run, he confessed. Tried to get out the front door. But I dragged her back inside. He tied her hands. Her feet. She kicked, tried to scream, but the towel muffled everything. Then he punched her again. And again. 7. Maybe 8 times. Eventually, she went limp. I didn't even check if she was breathing, he said. I just wanted to get out. He grabbed her jewelry. Her savings. Shoved them in a bag with his clothes. Then came the next step. He had 3 bottles of gasoline. Already prepped. He doused the entire trailer, and then poured the last bottle right on Faye's body. He lit a match, tossed it, and walked out. Locked the door behind him. The fire spread slowly, but it did its job. Neighbors were napping. No one saw him leave. It was 4:30 p.m. And by the time anyone noticed smoke, it was too late. Harold disappeared. Went to another city for 2 days. Then jumped on a boat, headed to Italy. But the one thing he didn't plan for? The cops were smarter than him. When they finally brought him in, they tricked him. Told him Faye was still alive. That she had survived the burns. He panicked. Wait, she's alive? He started mumbling, stuttering. Said, I didn't kill her. I just robbed her, that's all. But once he started talking, it was over. He confessed to everything. And when they told him the truth, that Faye was actually dead, it was too late. The state charged him with first-degree murder. And when the judge heard what he did, how he tied her down, how he beat her, how he set her on fire, the sentence was swift. Death penalty. The courtroom was silent. No tears for Harold Davis. Only rage. Only horror. Faye Monroe had worked, struggled, suffered, and all she wanted was a better life for her children. Instead, she died by the hands of the man she trusted most. If you've made it this far, thank you for watching. Let this story be a warning. If someone isolates you, controls you, abuses you, please get help before it's too late. Because monsters don't always wear masks. Sometimes, they sleep beside you. Like, comment, and subscribe if you want to hear more true crime stories like this one. We'll see you in the next case.